Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 123. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. A little special episode we talked about during the Monday show as we would recap the pre-draft press conference held by Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan that kicked off 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Just finished writing about it for the site, so Dave, let's you and I talk about it. Of course, Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, yet again, not telling us their exact draft plans, but we'll try to suss out exactly what they had to say. How you doing, Dave?
Happy Tuesday, and as the great Keith Butler would say, dadgummit, we didn't, Omar Khan didn't tell us who he was picking at 21, and he didn't lay out specific draft plans for us once again. I did find it, I don't know if you kind of picked up on this. It seemed like Omar Khan's answers were even kind of shorter than normal. I mean, he's never really been, he's been good at as he developed, has become GM and all to not give out good information, and he's getting even better at it. Now, there were even a couple of times where he said that's a good question, I think twice in total, and really didn't have an answer for any of those, being careful not to get hung by the tongue, so to speak there. So I did pick up on that. This, however long this ends up being with us, 30, 45 minutes. It might be actually longer than the actual press conference. I think that clocked in at 21 minutes and 30 seconds overall there. So it's going to be kind of more Seinfeldish, if anything. But there were a couple of, I think, kind of minor takeaways overall. And I will say I was disappointed that there was no questions about the OTA practices being shrunk down to 6. I was kind of hoping, hey, you guys only have 6 OTAs on the books instead of the 10. Why is that? We didn't get that asked, and there were no questions about TJ Watt. Even though you're probably not going to get a good answer on it, it would have been worth throwing out a question, to kind of get an update following that IG post from TJ Watt about a week and a half ago, whatever it was there. But those two topics were not addressed, and just kind of run-of-the-mill other answers that we could probably rubber stamp from other years when it comes to some answers.
Well, let's talk about what they did have to say, and potentially the most revealing comment Omar Khan made, and it's a low bar to clear. As you said, Omar Khan's not going to tell you much. I made the comment recently. I think he says even less than what Kevin Colbert did, but Omar Khan essentially saying Pittsburgh very unlikely to trade up in the first round with only those 6 draft picks, that number 52 selection now sitting in Seattle's lap as part of the DK Metcalf trade. Basically, Khan said we'll either stay at 21 or trade down. And so the odds of them making some sort of big move to go up and get somebody, including a quarterback, ostensibly unlikely to be the case. So they're going to likely either stick and pick or try to work their way down, get some extra capital on Thursday night.
And when asked about, possibilities of trading down and how they haven't really done that very much in the past, we've noted that Casey Hampton was the last time that they did it. Not surprising, the answer, we're not going to trade away from a good player. And, we're sure that there'll be, X amount of players probably on the board. And if not, I think he was asked something along the lines of how many players would you not trade away from? And he
that was
says,
one of those good questions.
Yeah, and that was one of those good questions. I would like to see that list, but
wouldn't we all?
But, we've talked about how far might they go down and who might come up. And I mean, we could spend an hour of worthless speculation and hypotheticals, even though we kind of did dive into that a little bit, I think, on this last show there. But long story short there is they feel pretty comfortable that there will be a player on the board at 21 that that they're comfortable with taking, and if they think they can possibly move down a couple of spots and still get one of maybe a handful of players, they'll leave that as an option as well. And it's not like you can push a button and push the Madden trade button and get something like that done. He commented on how, all those general managers talk to each other and have talked to each other, and they're not sure how truthful each of them are with each other. And usually, you don't really know whether you're going to get a chance to go up or down or whatnot until you're in the moment there. So nothing really learned there. And but I think the big takeaway, kind of what you alluded to, and we kind of came to this. We didn't really go out on a limb with speculating this, but if they were to move in the first round, it would likely be down instead of up.
Right. And frankly, just from all the information, Khan's comments, Schefter's report, obviously having the 6 picks, I've warmed to the idea and the chances of them trading down in the first round. Now, there are all the variables that we have to talk about. What happens as quarterback if Shedeur falls? Is that a position where they're not going to trade out because they want to take Shedeur Sanders or even one of the top defensive linemen? But I can certainly see it. I will not be surprised in the least if Pittsburgh trades down in the first round, and how far they go down and what that deal looks like. Who knows? We talked about the need to find a trade partner that wants to come up with you. All of those things are valid, but I think there'll be an appetite more so this year than other years to trade down for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm kind of hoping that happens, to be quite honest with you, just so we can, something new. I really, really would like to see this team acquire another top 100 pick overall. And I'm not sure I'm going to have the balls enough to predict any kind of a trade in my mock draft. I never do. I have flirted with the idea. I have thrown away several starts to drafts over the years, thinking I was going to do that, then didn't. But I'm hoping, in my gut, I'm hoping that they do. I'm not convinced that they obviously will, but I've had this burning feeling in my gut that somehow they're going to come out of the top first 3 rounds or top 100 picks overall with 3 picks. It just, how many drafts has this team had over the years, even dating back to like 2000, where they did not have at least 3 selections within the top 100 picks? And I think they kind of value those.
I'm not sure to answer that question, but I'll say if they only make 6 selections, it would tie for the second fewest picks they've ever made in an NFL draft. And they've been drafting since 1936. Now, granted, the drafts used to be 30 rounds long, but you get the point. They had 6 in 2020, traded that first round pick in 19 for Minkah Fitzpatrick. And then they had 5 in 2003, where they moved up and made that big move to get Trey Polamalu, a move that was certainly worth having only 5 selections in that class. So those are signals that suggest the team would trade down. Now, we talked about on the Monday show the possibility of trading George Pickens. Omar Khan sort of addressing that in a roundabout fashion today, expressing his excitement over having George Pickens and DK Metcalf on the same roster to be a good duo. Is that a smokescreen? Is that etched in stone? Pickens is staying? I wouldn't say that. I'm still of the mindset Pittsburgh will listen, but Khan's references were implying that Pickens is going to stay.
Yeah, and why wouldn't he? You want to at least invite. You want to invite as many calls as possible and say, "Oh no, we're fine." I wasn't surprised by the answer. Does that lessen the chance? Look, as we said, it would take the right offer.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just going to move George Pickens just to move him. It would have to be an enticing offer for this team to trade George Pickens, and that's the long and short of it. And he said contract. He was asked more along the lines of contract and possibly drafting a wide receiver, and if either of those 2 things play a part in them potentially trading George Pickens to maybe get in the second round, back in the second round per se. And the short answer to that was no, that the contract or wide receiver potential drafting the position would not impact that. I think it all comes down to as you would approach any situation with potentially drafting a player or trading draft picks and all. How good is the offer? Is it something that we can't say no to? And I think that's what it comes down to.
I still think it has to be a really good offer to get Pittsburgh to move Pickens because they want this offense to be at their best. And George Pickens, despite all of his warts and the acknowledgement that he's unlikely to be a Steeler beyond 2025, Pickens will still help this offense be at its best in 2025.
Absolutely.
All right, what else big from Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin? Let's address the elephants in the room at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers related discussion today. Mike Tomlin saying that Aaron Rodgers' decision and looming uncertainty will have no impact on the team's draft plans. Again, that could be more boilerplate, standard answer, but I believe it. I've made this point before. Even if Rodgers signs, he's a short-term play. He's a 2025 guy, a quarterback, especially in early ones, a long-term play for the future of the franchise beyond 2025. So I still and have always considered Rodgers and quarterback draft dynamics to be independent conversations, and they appear to be inside Pittsburgh's building.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even if somehow they were to sign Aaron Rodgers to a 2-year deal, even though the likelihood of that happening does not seem very probable. But even if you were, it would, you're basically it's a year by year thing for him. So you still have to look out for the long. You're not going into it thinking, man, we're unequivocally going to get 2 years out of Aaron Rodgers. So you have if the plan is to sign Aaron Rodgers, you have to think of it as 2025 alone and put yourself in the best position to maybe move forward with the quarterback position after 2025, if indeed Aaron Rodgers is in your building. And Aaron probably is well aware of that as well. So not a surprise there. And all options are still on the table when it comes to the quarterback position. And Omar Khan reiterated once again, right now we have two quarterbacks under contract. They fully intend on going to training camp with 4. That leaves two spots open, and he says unequivocally they will fill those 2 spots in some way, shape, or form. So will Aaron Rodgers be one of those? We'll see. It was interesting for Mike Tomlin to be asked about kind of that demarcation line about Aaron Rodgers and training camp, and Mike Tomlin kind of backpedaled a little bit, I guess overall when it comes to that, and he said, to be quite honest with you, I don't know that I meant that specifically for him or the circumstance. I'm just saying in general, when you report to training camp, man, it's a line of demarcation for development of a group individually of a group individually and collectively. And then he was also later asked if how he would feel about Aaron Rodgers missing OTAs and then showing up afterwards. He says he hadn't really given much thought to that, to be quite honest with you. So
You believe him?
I think in his heart of hearts, he obviously would want Aaron Rodgers there, but I do believe that they're all focused on the draft right now.
Sure. I can get on board with that, but it will be interesting because it sounds like Rodgers is not making a decision anytime soon, which may really put into focus that question of will he be there for OTAs and how the team feels about that if he is not there by May 27th, I believe is the first official OTAs. And technically, phase 1 of the offseason program for Pittsburgh began yesterday. Guys getting back in the building. You can do weight room stuff, strength and conditioning work. Not really urgent. Rodgers does not need to be there for that, so that's not a line to me. But it's coming up pretty quick. They're going to get some on-field work, I think, starting in May, and then the full, really first team activity beginning in late May.
Right.
Let's talk Shedeur Sanders now. Mike Tomlin. Yeah, what I thought was interesting, Dave, was for the longest time, Pittsburgh would never talk about players not under contract, not even acknowledge their existence, essentially. I think Kenny Pickett was a rare exception to that. Maybe this is interesting when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, because Mike Tomlin was asked about the meeting with Shedeur Sanders and really spoke highly of the meeting and of Shedeur personally as a football player. Talked about really good tape. He talked about his toughness and intangibles. What do you make of that? Is this smoke screen? Is this Tomlin singing the praises of Shedeur and telling you this is going to be the guy. There's been a lot of reporting that Mike Tomlin likes Shedeur Sanders. His comments today certainly support that, although you wouldn't expect Tomlin to trash Shedeur if he didn't like him for whatever reason. What's your read on everything?
Alex, I would like you to open your drawer. I'd like you to
Okay.
pull out your tinfoil hat.
Ah,
We're going to have a tinfoil hat situation. We're going to go way too deep into this because look, they didn't give us a lot to talk about, right? So let's parse some of this out. The thing that jumped out the most to me about Tomlin being asked about Shedeur Sanders in his pre-draft visit, there was one thing that that jumped out to me. And it was the line. Any guesses on what it was?
You're saying the line that jumped out to you the most?
Yeah, the quote,
Let me think.
the selection of quote that jumped out the most to me.
I think the second part of his answer, when Tomlin was almost pushing back, not explicitly, but implicitly on some of the narratives against Shedeur Sanders. He says there's a toughness that does not get talked about enough. There's a competitive spirit there that does not get talked about enough. Was almost going to bat for Shedeur and saying this guy does not get credit for these things. They talk about his personality, his intangibles as a negative, and I see it as a positive.
No, that wasn't. That's not the tinfoil hat line I'm going down here.
all right, hit me.
What jumped out to me was he says, I've obviously known his father for a long time. My first time meeting him. So when Shedeur Sanders came in for a pre-draft visit, there's no other way to look at this other than that was the first time Mike Tomlin met Shedeur Sanders. Is that how you took it?
Sure. Are you surprised by that? What do you see as notable about that?
I'm not surprised by that.
I'm surprised by that. You're telling me throughout the combine, the pre-draft process, the roaming around the country, Deion Sanders, prominence throughout, through his time, and you're telling me that's the first time he met Shedeur Sanders, was bringing him into the building?
Well, Shedeur went to the Shrine Bowl, and Tomlin always goes to the Senior Bowl.
Sure.
I guess that confirms they did not have a combine formal, but I think at that time Pittsburgh probably thought this guy will be a top 5 pick. We don't have a chance at him, so we're not even going to really pursue that. And so, Shedeur was at Jackson State in Colorado. Tomlin's obviously not going to schools during the season. I mean, I'm not super shocked by that.
Okay, I was, and my thought being now, okay, that's the first time how long was that meeting? Supposedly 6 hours.
5-6 hours, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, and they obviously did not go to the Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan did not go to the Colorado showcase, right?
Correct.
So all that you have to judge Shedeur Sanders on right now is a 6-hour meeting and all of his game tape.
From Tomlin's standpoint, but the organization has done a lot of homework.
Sure.
There's a lot of people that are providing information to Tomlin, but I understand your point.
You see what I just, and once again, leave it to me to overanalyze this stuff. But I mean, you're going to potentially make this guy a first round pick at 21st overall. And his trip to Pittsburgh was the first time meeting him.
Yeah, what I think is interesting, and if Shedeur Sanders is the pick, is he'd be the franchise quarterback of the future, the guy they're betting on, and Mike Tomlin has never seen him throw in person once in his life. And I think that's kind of the point of what you're getting at. Now, of course, the team has scouted him, and there's tape and all that kind of stuff, but it would be interesting for him to be the guy. Same for Jackson Dart. I mean, although they saw Jackson Dart at the Senior Bowl and they watched him throw there in person. I mean, I guess Tomlin, well, no, because Shedeur didn't throw at the combine, right? Yeah, Shedeur did not throw at the combine. So literally, Mike Tomlin has never seen him throw in person before. So that
am I crazy?
Well,
I mean, yeah. The short answer is yes. But
yeah, it's a longer discussion we'll have off air. I think the point about never seeing him throw is interesting for sure. But maybe Pittsburgh's doing things differently because they took Kenny Pickett because of comfort, which is a rare word for Mike Tomlin to use. He never talks about comfort. He always says he doesn't seek comfort. But when they drafted Kenny Pickett, they talked about the comfort with a guy that they knew really well, of course, being in their building, essentially. So maybe they realized we shouldn't lean on the comfort of a guy that we have a lot of exposure to because it doesn't always work out. Maybe that's their thought process.
But he knew Kenny Pickett well by the time they drafted him, right?
Well, that's my point. Are they going to go in the opposite direction? Okay, we screwed up on Pickett. We got too comfortable with just knowing him well, and that wasn't the key to him having NFL success. And so let's do something a little more uncomfortable. Maybe that's the answer. And I think part of this is also they just never expected Shedeur to be in the 21 conversation. He was viewed as a top 5 pick. He's going to go to the Giants at 3. He's going to go to the Browns at 2. He's just not in contention. That's why he came in for a visit, because they realized this guy might fall. We need to get this guy in the building because he might be sitting there at 21. We have not done a ton of homework on him. Tomlin has not had the exposure to him in the pre-draft process because Shedeur did not throw at the combine, because there was no formal, because he went to the Shrine Bowl, not the Senior Bowl. We got to do some homework and get some FaceTime on this guy. So if he's there, we can have a really good conversation about do we take him or not.
But should you, throughout, if you're going to thoroughly judge this quarterback class, even for future years and with as much attention, shouldn't you have been prior? What are you not? Because we've seen it. Anything can happen in a draft. And look, they didn't think Kenny Pickett would fall, right?
They tried to trade up for him.
So, and if that's, and it goes back to the thing too, if you're convinced Shedeur Sanders is the guy and you think there's a relative chance that he could be a franchise quarterback, we've talked about, if you have a conviction in a guy, then you should go up and get him.
Yeah, I think to your point about should they have done more homework on Shedeur earlier in the process. I mean, it's just tough because he didn't throw at the combine, because he didn't go to the Shrine Bowl, or because he didn't go to the Senior Bowl. He went to the Shrine Bowl, and Tomlin's not going to go to the Shrine Bowl just for that. And also, Shedeur didn't even throw at the Shrine Bowl, so there wasn't a whole lot to go there for. So
then I'm going to get my ass out to that Colorado showcase then.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it was. I wonder when the visit was actually made, when they kind of realized this guy might start to slip. That was right around the showcase time. So I hear you on that for sure. So that's a valid critique. But I think once Pittsburgh realized this guy may start to fall, may be in our laps at 21, we need to bring the guy in. So it's not like they haven't had exposure to him. They have, and they're probably a lot more comfortable. I'm using that word again, but their evaluation is more thorough, knowing that now he may be there at 21.
All right. Do you think this was any sort of different pre-draft visit with him than it is for any other player that they brought in of the 30?
No, and I think Tomlin attested to that and spoke to that. But what I just thought was interesting was, when was the last time you've heard Mike Tomlin talk so in depth about an individual player not under contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, especially when it comes to draft picks and names. Yeah,
right.
You're
not,
right.
not an opponent that he's speaking during his usual Tuesday press conference, but somebody like
Right.
that. I mean, he has been a lot more transparent about Rodgers, because it used to be, and maybe this is a Colbert influence. Colbert would always say we don't talk about players who are not under contract, not in our building specifically. But the exception I remember Colbert making was on Kenny Pickett. I think he even referenced, like, we almost never talked about guys specifically, but okay, we know Kenny Pickett pretty well, so we'll talk about him. And they took him. And Tomlin spoke really highly. He says, quote, like I said earlier, quote, "There's a toughness there that doesn't get talked about enough. There's a competitive spirit there that does not get talked about enough. I know he's very talented and he's made a lot of plays for his university and his team, but the intangible qualities displayed on tape were impressive to me," end quote, on Shedeur Sanders from Mike Tomlin. It's a pretty heavy statement.
Okay. All right. I see the angle you're coming from and why you would think maybe that's what stuck out to me. And once again, I might have my tinfoil hat on too tight, but I might be looking for too much. But that jumped out to me that it was first time meeting him.
Yeah. No, I get where your head is at, especially for the whole process. Maybe it's not a surprise they hadn't met years before, but first time, meeting basically. What day did Shedeur come in? The 6th, something like that?
It was later in the process.
Yeah, basically you meet the guy for the first time 20 days, we'll say, before the draft, and make him your future of the franchise. That is, talk about precedent breaking. I assume that would qualify for Pittsburgh.
And we don't know for sure how precedent breaking that would be, but I mean, you're talking about the most important position in major sports. And yeah, we met him for the first time on April, whatever it was, 6th, and we're turning around and draft him in the first round to be our franchise quarterback 21 whatever days later.
Right, but if you love the guy, you love the guy, and that's all that really matters. So, and to be fair, Tomlin was asked about Shedeur Sanders. He didn't willingly volunteer this information, and this could be smokescreen type of stuff. Tomlin tried to allude to that about he's made this comment in the past that I'll talk to a guy at a pro day just to get the media stirring, and we'll bring in guys for visits to get the media stirring. First of all, they bring in guys for visits to draft. And under
Right.
Omar Khan, what is it? 9 of their 14 picks have come in for visits. So I don't believe that stuff is smokescreen at all. Maybe the pro day stuff a little bit, but Tomlin maybe still trying to play some games out there.
All right, let's throw this out to in the middle of this show to our listeners to see what kind of responses we get either on YouTube or email or in the post on the site and all like that. Dave has lost it focusing on first time meeting. I think Dave's on to something. Boo Dave, good for Dave, whatever. Chime in on your thoughts on me focusing on Mike Tomlin saying that was the first time meeting Shedeur Sanders when he came in for a pre-draft visit. If makes any sense the way I laid out, or does Alex's take on it with Mike Tomlin talking more in depth about a draft prospect than really he has really ever. Maybe I don't have all these chronicle in chronicalized in my head and all, but you just don't normally see them talk that in depth about tangibles, intangibles, or whatnot of a specific player ahead of the draft.
All right, Dave, what else stuck out to you?
The terrible podcast at gmail.com.
There you go. What else stuck out to you about this pre-draft presser?
I was asked about the nose tackle position, and let's see if I can get the exact kind of question. What was the exact question overall that he was asked?
I forget the exact nature of
Hold
it.
on
just
here, I've
the
got it.
value of a nose tackle, getting that guy on the field.
He said on. Damn it.
I can read off the answer of that if you want to just.
Oh no, he was asked on if it is harder to find a nose tackle that can give you a little something in pass rush, or is it harder to find the defensive end that's really solid in the run game? He says, I think the nose is a disappearing animal the way that the fullback is a disappearing animal in our game.
What do you make of that, Dave? I mean, it's true. We do the charting. I've been charting the Steelers defense for a decade now. It's a labor of love, but it provides some really valuable information that you can even really get easily from places like PFF. And last year, Pittsburgh was in their base 3-4 defense 26.7% of the time, 266 snaps, the lowest percentage we've charted in the decade we've been doing it. It's a sub-package world. Everybody knows that. And that was even more and more evident in 2024. So does this disappearing animal disappear the chances for Kenneth Grant to be the pick at 21?
It doesn't. If you take this at face value, and he means what he says, and he says what he means, it's not a great thing overall for a guy like Kenneth Grant, who mostly played in the A gap and then some in the B gap.
There was also a comment Tomlin made. Maybe you can find it. It was earlier. It wasn't part of that answer about different types of defensive linemen. He was asked about the quality of the D-line class and said they're just different traits and different types of guys. He made a reference to something about, I think, big guys who are athletic, and that seemed like a reference to Kenneth Grant because he is that quintessential big nose tackle, but plays a lot lighter on his feet, a lot more athletic than you would expect of a guy of his frame.
Yeah, let's see. Where was it particularly?
I think it was earlier. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I'll find it here while
I will say that Grant is not your traditional nose tackle that's just big run stuffer, can't rush the passer. I mean, he's a guy that can play in sub package, that's athletic. We've had that clip of him chasing down that Penn State running back in open grass. I mean, he's dropping the coverage occasionally. He is maybe a blend of that old school big, early man in the middle, but also, again, really light on his feet, really good athlete for the position. So maybe you could sit there and argue that, Grant is not just your old school plugger because he certainly is not just that.
Right. But he also doesn't, you don't have tape on him moving out towards the tackle, really.
Sure, he's not going to play defensive end, but in this scenario, you would assume Keanu Benton would kick out. And in some sense, you could sit there and say we're solving two problems at once. We're getting our bigger nose tackle, and we're solving the whole defensive end by putting Benton out to replace Ogunjobi.
Sure. But let's see, schematic. Let's see. I think and this is probably goes for any discussion about any position group. The higher you're picking in a draft, the less you're concerned about schematic fits because their pedigree should supersede schematic fits. And the more marginal the pedigree, the more you better identify the schematic fit. And so later in the draft, that's probably more significant discussions regarding schematic fits than at the top of the draft. Those animals at the top end of the draft, I'd imagine, fit in any system of football, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams.
Yeah, so the higher up you go, the more it's about the talent will fit in, and you're just trying to find really good players who can make that high level impact. And Pittsburgh certainly said their issues in the first round of acquiring good talent, and that's what they have to change this year. He says, yeah, this is the comment that I was referencing earlier about different shapes and sizes in the D-line class. Tomlin says, quote, some guys are power players who happen to be athletic. If you're talking about elite interior defensive linemen, some guys are oversized athletes. And it's the same on Sunday ball. Some guys are power players who happen to be athletic. Some guys are oversized athletes. And oftentimes that means they get the job done in a different way. I don't know. It just seemed like a little reference maybe to Kenneth Grant, but that maybe my tinfoil hat's on a little too tight there.
Well, here's the thing: if you're not in a base, all right, let's take Larry Ogunjobi for example. The last couple of years, how many, what's kind of the furthest out he went?
What do you mean the further, like alignment wise?
Yeah, alignment wise.
Probably 5 tech.
Okay, and he obviously wasn't great in the further out that he got. He wasn't great overall, but
yeah, just didn't play well. I mean, the point is, like, Grant can play in sub package. Is there anything about Kenneth Grant that would say this guy cannot play in our 2-4-5 nickel?
No.
So does this comment apply to Grant that much?
I think you do want more versatile, though. That I do think this was somewhat of a shot at what Grant's best at, and that's closer to the center.
Fair, and that was my first thought as well. And certainly, if you drafted a Derek Harmon or even another position, you're going to get more snaps out of a Harmon or another position than you would a Kenneth Grant. I think it's probably the main takeaway. Maybe I'm getting a little too in the weeds about it, but that is a valid thought of, okay, this guy we drafted in the first round, he's going to play, best case 500 snaps this season. And is that what you're looking for ideal return on investment in the first round? That's the debate.
Right, and might you be able to get a quality run, or at least a guy stand up and not get moved at nose tackle position later on in a draft, or even maybe in undrafted free agent. I think there's been some talk about didn't Biggers check all the boxes or whatnot in what they look for, and what kind of alignment did he have?
I'll have to check on both, but I do think about, to kind of answer your question, a Jamari Caldwell. You get that guy. Third, fourth round. He's also got a little bit of mobility to him. I don't want to typecast him as just a pure plugger, even though he did not have a sack last season for the Ducks. He had 6.5 the year before with Houston before he transferred in. This is just for the defensive end study, but the 5 that checked the boxes were Darius Alexander, the name you mentioned, Zeke Biggers from Georgia Tech. Kenneth Grant did check every box. Ty Robinson from Nebraska, and Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia.
Pulling up Zeke Biggers now. College career, 276 snaps at A gap, 952 at B.
Okay, he's got really good size, good profile, 6'05", 321, nearly 35-inch arms, tested well, good athlete. Certainly a name to think about. Pittsburgh, I don't know, have they shown a lot of overt interest in him?
It doesn't feel like it. Who else was on that list that made the cut? I know
it was Darius Alexander, Biggers, Kenneth Grant, your guy, Ty Robinson, and Nazir Stackhouse.
Stackhouse.
6'0", 3'6", 327, 32.5-inch arms, a little more profile of the interior 1-3 tech type.
Pulled him up 587 in the A gap, 761 in the B gap.
There you go. That's 1-3 tech there for Nazir Stackhouse.
All right.
So we'll see. They're drafting defensive lineman. Will it be first round? Will it be a double dip? Will it be third round? We'll find out.
All right. What else stuck out to you from Tomlin and Khan? Almost said Colbert.
Confidence in Jaylen Warren as running back 1. He talked about the big opportunity that Warren has ahead of him, hampered by injuries last season, a real chance for a clean slate. Big year for Jaylen Warren, who apparently is not signed as tender, by the way. That's not really not alarming, but a little notable. But we also know this team is almost certain to draft a running back. So despite them playing up Jaylen Warren, there's going to be somebody, a 1B to Warren's 1A in 2025.
They're going to add to that room, period.
Yeah, yes.
And
who and how early and all that stuff.
Right. And the takeaway was, look, we're comfortable at least initially moving forward with Jaylen as he has a potential, in other words, to be our main horse.
Right. And it's a big year for Jaylen Warren. If he has a really strong season, there's a payday on the other side. And I'll just keep referencing, not to say that it can't happen, but the last running back Pittsburgh paid on a second contract was Willie Parker in 2006. So it's been a hot minute since it happened. I know they tried with Le'Veon Bell. They wanted to with Le'Veon Bell. Point is, they did not do it. And so we'll see if an extension happens later this season. I think that's probably unlikely before the season begins. I think they want to see Warren in that role before committing to him long term. But I guess you can't completely rule it out.
How explosive does this running back in this draft that they take need to be?
Pretty explosive. Omar Khan talked about it in the offseason. One of the few things he said that I thought was interesting in his commentary meetings with the media, this offense needs playmakers. They want playmakers. They want guys who are dynamic. It's why you trade for DK Metcalf. It's, as I said before, to a lesser degree, you added Kenneth Gainwell, a space player, more quick than fast, not going to break out a lot of big plays, but can make guys miss and certainly burn Pittsburgh last year. It's why they brought in smaller running backs, guys that had a lot of speed. Dylan Sampson, Bashal Tootin, RJ Harvey, DJ Giddens, all guys that ran 4.3, 4.4, that had big plays at the college level. And so that's what they're looking for at running back. I'm pretty confident we're away from the 225-pound bruiser. They're looking more for the 210-pound playmaker.
And there's not a lot of them that really check all the boxes overall. And even though it's a diminished because we don't have all of the short shuttle cones and on, I think you've kind of had it a little abbreviated. There's a lot of guys that I think check all the boxes except for height and weight from traditional, right?
Right, and that's where I think you can't lean on the criteria of what Pittsburgh has looked for at running back as easily as other positions, because I think the mold and the model is changing for this year, where they're going to look for somebody, they're going to sacrifice some size to gain some speed. And Travion Henderson, another name that you can add to that list of a little smaller but big play home run ability. So I think the guardrails from the past are not going to be as clear indicators of who they're going to take this year. I think we'll see a different type of running back come in, and they need a different type of running back.
Yeah, they do. They need a playmaker. So in other words, you won't be shocked if one under 5'9" comes in the door.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to stop them. If it's a guy that's 205, RJ Harvey's 5'8" and change, 205, 210, he's on the table. The height weight's not going to disqualify guys, whereas in 2021, it was, do you want Najee Harris or Travis Etienne? And Harris was bigger and stronger and more powerful. Etienne was faster, more dynamic. Out of Clemson, they went Harris. I think if the rules applied as they are now to 2021, they would have taken Etienne back then. Whereas they took Harris, they had a different philosophy. They wanted the bell cow. They wanted the 3-down running back. That's what Harris was as a rookie until Warren came on scene, made them a committee, and now they're looking for the big plays. I had that tweet the other day. Since 2021, Pittsburgh only has one run of 40-plus yards. That's dead last in the entire NFL. That was Jaylen Warren's 74-yard score in that terrible Cleveland game in 2023. So Pittsburgh is looking and needing those big plays across the board offensively, but especially in the run game.
And a couple of years before that, what the longest run of the season? The other Edmonds?
Trey Edmonds. Yep. Have not gotten that for a while. Those big plays from running back.
And then look, 20, we talk all the time, 20-yard runs are stealing in the NFL, but heck, give me a guy that can consistently have a high percentage of those 10-yard runs,
Sure, but it's nice to have that 20-yard run that doesn't make you go on a 10-play, 70-yard drive.
Right.
We just hit that big play, you get a big chunk play, and all of a sudden you go from in your own territory to midfield, or from midfield into field goal range, or from the 30 to the end zones. You're just flipping fields, you're changing circumstances, you're not slogging your way where you got to be efficient and get a first down and 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's a hard way to win at the NFL level. Pittsburgh knows that the top offenses can bust off that big play. Look at Saquon Barkley. What was that? The Washington playoff game? First play of the game, first touch, 70-yard touchdown. How many 60-yard runs did Barkley have last year? That changes momentum. It just changes your dynamic as an offense in general. All those things are attractive. All those things Pittsburgh needs. That's why they trade for Metcalf. That's why they're going to draft a speedy running back.
And what about what Jamar Gibbs brought to Detroit?
Sure, the big plays there too. Yeah,
and how big is he?
He's not a huge guy. He was a first
5'9", 200. What was his official combine?
I can look it up, but that's a first round pick. You're kind of tacitly saying draft a running back in the first round.
Oh no, I'm not saying that.
I'm just messing with you. He's a 5'091, a $199 according to Draft Scout.
All right, and that guy's delivered some explosive plays for sure.
4.36, 40 at the combine, and playing like it at the NFL level in Detroit. So yeah, you're gonna the need for speed, and Pittsburgh added speed at receiver last year. Not with the most quality players, but they added some speed. They added a whole lot more with DK, and they're going to add more in the backfield.
Is it okay to draft a running back in the mid rounds that meets all that criteria, even if you're only going to get 3, maybe 4 years out of them?
Yeah, I think in the mid rounds at that point, you get a guy on a full rookie contract is 4 years. Then, if it's a third, fourth round pick, there were worse outcomes than that. I just think it's tough in the first round to have a guy that you sit there and say, maybe we get 5 years out of him in a best case scenario, which is what happened. Well, not even what happened with Najee Harris. You got 4, but you want that first rounder to really be an anchor for the next decade. And, again, unless you're a team like, I don't know, a Philadelphia where that running back is that last missing piece to really go take that first round pick on a guy, then it's hard to justify a running back in the first round. But we're going to see a couple of first round backs this year. Ashton Genty is going to be clearly a first round guy, and I think you could see up to 3 running backs go in the top 32. So, that model may be reverting back a little bit, seeing the success that the Eagles had with Barkley, the Ravens had with Derrick Henry, the Packers had with Josh Jacobs.
Agreed. All right. What else stuck out to you about Khan and Tomlin? Is there anything else that we didn't hit that was really notable?
That was basically it. Omar Khan downplayed looking at 2026 quarterbacks to dictate what will happen in 2025. Says, yes, there is, you're aware kind of generally of what's out there next year, but that's not going to drive decisions for 2025.
Okay. Anything else? Trying to scroll through here real quick. I think we hit most of the main takeaways, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so. Any other news of the day? I know my mock draft came out today. We'll talk about that tomorrow when Dave's releases so we can compare and contrast. Jersey numbers for Steelers came out. We can probably save some of that for tomorrow. Nothing crazy there. Darius Slay's getting 23, and so he's not going to get a single digit he was wearing previously. Anything else, Dave?
No, I think we got it, and we're going to have a bunch of these over the next couple of days, so we want to save our voices, and we'll definitely tomorrow will be a big show talking about our mock drafts and all. So let's see what we get to talk about in addition to that on Wednesday, right?
All right. Sounds good. I'll be back on Wednesday.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Follow the directions that way to donate. If you want an ad-free version, Same thing. Look for the button in the navigational bar and follow directions that way. We have app on the iOS for at the Apple Store. Alex and I will be back on Wednesday with yet another episode of this. And look, once again, I'm interested to hear people's comments or remarks about my focusing in on the first time meeting Shedeur Sanders conversation that we had. Should get some funny takes about that. Both maybe good and bad, so we'll see. But in the meantime, until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.